manifesto, read the communist manifesto, gorillas in the mix, the Guevara and Ernesto. So welcome back to another episode of Oakland Is. We got the whole crew here with you. Judah.
Hey.
Marcus.
What's up, y'all?
Ray.
What's going on?
And yours truly, A. Trav. As usual, we want to remind you, we do have an Instagram at Oakland_is, Oakland_is. So you can follow us there. And also, wherever you get this podcast, be sure to subscribe so you can get the latest episodes downloaded automatically. But also today, we got a special guest in the house, Mr. OG Penn himself.
What's happening?
Sir.
Pendarvis Harshaw. What should we call you? Penn?
Penn,
Pendarvis? Mr. Harshaw?
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Okay. That's right. We're very excited to have Penn with us today. We'll get into why he's here in a moment. But before we get to all that, today's episode is brought to you by that spot on the 80 freeway, like right around Emeryville, when you got about 8 seconds to figure out if you're going to downtown Oakland, East Oakland, Alameda, Walnut Creek, or San Francisco. And without fail, doesn't matter where you're coming from or where you're going, you're changing at least 2 lanes. Like at least, you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the junction is definitely going to be traffic.
Yeah.
MacArthur Maze.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it, it's like, you know where you're going. It's not your first time trying to get on the freeway.
Exactly.
Get off, like, stay in your lane and just go where you need to go, bro. But everybody don't think that way.
So here's the thing, right? It doesn't matter where I'm coming from. Whenever I get to that part of the freeway, I've never already been in the lane that I'm trying to end up in. Like I'm always like, oh, I gotta get over 4 lanes real quick. Or like, I'll be coming back from IKEA, right? And it's just like, sometimes it's like, you know what? Like, do I need anything in San Francisco? Because like, do I really want to try to change 6 lanes right now? But anyway,
there's that other exit too on Maritime. You can double back.
That's true.
Get on
I learned about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
we had a double back, like the little CHP little parking lot right there. The highway patrol. That's what that is right there, right? Like right before the toll.
Like right before the toll.
Yeah, if you
that's even
actually go
past
there,
Maritime.
so you can turn around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm never pulling in there. Don't gotta double back that bad. I will see you on Treasure Island.
Anyways, we have a special episode for you today. Today's actually the first in a series that we're getting started with called Oakland Is Doing Big Things. Pretty simple premise. We are profiling Oakland-affiliated individuals who essentially are doing big things. And that's why we have you here with us today.
So why am I here?
No, but honestly, and we were talking a little bit about this before the show, but like I feel like you're kind of the poster child for really what we're trying to do with this series. You're coming from Oakland. You're doing a lot of positive stuff. You've been doing a lot of positive stuff for many years now. So I couldn't be happier for you to be the inaugural guest that we have for this episode. So
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you being here. Appreciate your time. A couple of things I'll call out real quickly. This podcast is actually indebted to you. You put me in contact with Boots' people when I needed to reach out to see about permission to use Dig It on the intro and outro. And real quick story. I remember at the time, the podcast hadn't started yet. We were kind of still getting everything together, still getting organized. But I remember thinking like, man, Dig It, like that song would be so perfect for like what we're trying to do with the podcast. So I'm kind of like, okay, like I'm not in media or whatever. I don't know how I would initiate getting in touch with people, but I reached out to you. You put me in touch with these people. So I'm like, okay. I set out to write an email. I'm like, I'm just going to shoot my shot. Tell them, here's what we're trying to do. Here's what I think the song would be so cool, whatever. Bro, the next day, I got an email back from people like, he gives a thumbs up. It was kind of surreal because I was like, damn, like that's really cool. And then I was like, like we really got to do this now. You know what I'm saying? Like we were gonna do it. You know what I'm saying? But like I think what I would say is like that was probably the moment when it became tangible. It was like, oh, we're really doing a podcast. We got real intro music. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that was really cool. So appreciate that.
That was last fall, right?
Yeah, this was like September.
Last fall, yeah. That was around the time I saw Boots in Atlanta randomly.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
And it's one of those things, like I walked up, he was sitting eating with his family, and I saw a person with the Boots Riley hat.
Right.
And I'm like, who the hell in Atlanta got a Boots Riley?
Right.
Oh, it's Boots Riley. It was great. Yeah, I'm glad it was him.
That's why. Yeah, right.
It's the other person in a big ass Arby's hat.
Right. That's wild.
Underrated MC too, man.
Oh yeah,
Fully underrated, man. One of the top tier MCs out there, man.
Yeah. Full disclosure, I mean, I discovered him kind of late in the game, but I remember when I mean, Dig It was the first like that I forget the Kill Your Landlord album. That was the first album that I got into, and as soon as Dig It came on, I was like, what? Like, you know, the stuff he's talking about. I was like, yo, this is right. Like, this is right up my alley. So. Yeah, big fan. And again, appreciate you putting that in motion.
It's all good.
The other thing that I'll mention, just for the benefit of the audience, so you and I have a little bit of history. We actually went to high school together. So back, 20 years.
20 years. Yeah.
And I know it's 20 years because I went to the 20-year I went to my 20-year reunion last year in the summer. So, which is kind of crazy. I guess you got yours
coming up
this year. Are you planning
Hell
to go?
No. No, I might go. Who knows, man? Yeah. We went to a different world for high school, and I don't know if I'm always in the spirit to revisit that world.
Right, I got you. No, that's real. That's deep. We'll probably get into that a little bit. I actually thought so. Speaking of high school, I thought that was probably a good place to maybe, or rather, the ending of high school and the transition from there to the next step of your life. I thought that'd be an interesting place to kind of kick off the conversation. Correct me if I'm wrong. After you graduated from high school, you went to Howard. Right?
I did. I spent a year at Laney first.
Right. Okay.
I went to Laney College. So, I mean, I guess context is everything, right? So we go to the Athenian School, which is a college preparatory school in Danville near Black Hawk. And I saw wealth that I'd never seen before. Like before I saw that, I thought Lakeshore was the suburbs,
Right.
And so seeing real, true wealth blew my mind. And I also didn't reap all the benefits from it because I don't feel like they were prepared to. I was trying to go to a HBCU, and the counselors there didn't have all the connections. And so I ended up going to Laney. And at the same time, I had already started in journalism through youth radio.
Okay.
And then I saw the 10th anniversary of the Million Man March. And that's what led me to Howard. I went out there on a grant. I got a grant to go out there and report on the 10th anniversary of the Million Man March.
While you were at Laney?
While I was at Laney.
Okay.
And,
that's what's up.
That's wild.
And so I saw that and I was like, oh, there are black people who have gold ones and are studying to be doctors. I want to kick it with them,
Right.
And so, that's how I ended up at Howard.
That's wild. Okay. And so then coming from out here, and I guess coming from Laney, what was that transition like for you? Like sort of when you first got there and kind of like, settled into the
It was a mixed bag.
Everything.
Yeah, the culture. DC reminds me of the Bay Area on top of itself. When I say that, I mean like it's an international city like San Francisco. It has the grit of Oakland, and it's a college town like Berkeley, and it's in a very small, confined space,
Okay.
It's kind of a doorway city where people come in and out constantly.
Right.
So I had to recognize that. And then coming from Athenian, one of the issues that I had was like race. It was a lot of, white folks out in the suburbs. But then I started to recognize the other issue that I had was class. And at Howard, I saw another rendition of that, but it was just in a black face. And I was like, oh, there's a lot of wealthy black folks out here who don't necessarily come, even if they're from Oakland, not from the same Oakland I'm from. Or if they're from Chicago is really the best example. Sure. They say they're from Chicago, but really they're from down the block. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so I had trouble making connections initially. And then the weather. The East Coast weather ain't no hope. Right. Yeah, me and Paul Masson got real familiar, man. But yeah, so once I navigated that, I really hit a stride, especially once I was doing spoken word and journalism and stuff.
Okay.
And so I hit my stride doing that.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask about that. Like, so it sounds like when you got to Howard, you already had your mind kind of set on journalism. Like, it was that immediately your major and all that?
I'd been doing journalism since I was 16 through Youth Radio and Youth Outlook in San Francisco. Right. And I had stuff published through like Huffington Post, NPR. And I went out to Howard with a small documentary about my best friend in the world, this dude, Jesus L. He's an acro dunker, jumping off of trampolines and dunking for the halftime show for the Warriors.
I remember. I met him. He came out to New York with you, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He
used to do the halftime shows at the games that we would play at, right? Okay.
And also so when we came to New York, at that time he had pivoted to being Stomper.
Yeah, I was gonna say he was Stomper. Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead. He was the A's mascot.
Hey, he used to go crazy.
Right? He was turf dancing as the mascot.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, on one of your videos,
was Stomper going dumb?
Yeah.
So that was like his mentor who was in the suit at that point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I bring up Zeus because I produced a documentary about him, and so I knew what I wanted to do media wise by then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask a question about something that you brought up. You were familiar with kind of like racial differences, right? Like you saw that in high school, being in a predominantly white environment, but like obviously being black. And then being at Howard and seeing the same kind of class disparity, but now it was all blacks. Are there examples of how you saw that play out or anything that stands out to you?
It's just what you would do on the weekend, you know? Like there are some people who go to the club and buy a table, or just going to the club, paying to go into a venue.
Right.
Was like, I'm in college, I can't afford that.
Right.
So I ended up kicking it at the weed spot, you know? Like I'm around my like-minded people, we can smoke and chill and not spend a lot of money.
Right.
And so, yeah, through fashion, through what you did on the weekends, and then to what you did during your breaks, what people would, instead of taking trips to the mountains or something like that, I would just stay in the dorms.
Right.
Do you feel like growing up in Oakland and going to Athenian, like being exposed to those two different environments, prepared you better for the diversity and class disparity in DC?
Yeah, I would credit Oakland. I'd credit specifically playing baseball in East Oakland and then North Oakland. I saw differences there. And I'd also credit a lot to my mom, where she understood that like I'm being exposed to this world at Athenian, and she kind of let me run through East Oakland on the weekends so that I could have real life exposure, if you will. And that gave me a good balance so that when people were at house parties drinking Everclear, I'm like, no, like I knew already at 18, you know? And that was through, you know, being exposed to drinking at 14, you know, I knew what was up. And so, yeah, I really credit the fact that my mom really trusted my navigational skills, if you will.
That's interesting. That actually reminds me a little bit on the home episode. We talked about when you're raising kids and sort of that I think you call it a tightrope, right? That you're trying to, that balance you're trying to strike between you want to expose them to things, right? So that they can build up that sense, you know what I'm saying? But then you also want to protect them, the bad, as much as you can, but you also kind of have to sort of expose and kind of navigate that.
Yep. Can't live life for them. You're just going to tell them what to do.
Right.
That's all you can do.
But a bit of exposure is good. I just had this with my daughter recently where she was like, I was wearing a Biggie shirt and she was like, who's he?
Right.
And I was like, all right, we'll listen to these 3 songs and that's it. So we played Hypnotized, Juicy, and Sky's the Limit.
Right.
So now you get a sense of who he is. We'll revisit him in 10 years. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
There we go. Do you feel like your time at Howard left any particular mark on you? Like, is there something that you really feel like, you know what, that part of me was kind of crystallized during that period of my life at Howard?
Yeah, I came in knowing that I wanted to be a journalist. I left out thinking I could be a teacher, like an educator, like working with young men specifically. And I was a resident assistant. I did 5.5 years at Howard. And so during that whole time period, I was a resident assistant working in the freshman male dorm. And so I have little brothers all around the nation, all around the world now. Right. And that really allowed me to understand that, okay, mentorship is needed and I can play a vital role. And even using journalism to do that. And so when I came back to the town, I was teaching at, I taught at every school, but specifically the one that really sunk in and I used those skills from Howard out here was teaching at Tech. I was at Tech. They had this program called the African American Male Achievement Program, which now has changed names. But it was a class specifically focused for 17 young men who bumped their heads in middle school. So they already kind of had a target on them as they were coming in 9th grade. And I was working with them to just like, this is how you build confidence and answer questions. This is how, you know, little things like that. Right. And at 23 or 22, I needed to see myself in that role as well. And so that layer of responsibility broadened my shoulders.
Right. That's dope. That's really cool. So when you first got out of Howard, where did you go from there? I guess you kind of just touched on it a little bit.
Yeah. So Howard's 5.5 years. Again, I did journalism. I traveled. You know, this is the transition of the Obama years. His first term, you know?
Right.
But yeah, so I get out here and I'm a class short from graduating from Howard. Right. And so I kind of just threw college away for a couple years and really pursued journalism. I taught at Tech. I also got involved in this program, this like after school workshop program that allowed me to teach at McClymonds and Castlemont. I worked at every OUSD school, every OUSD high school. And I was trying to pass this accounting class. I couldn't pass it. To finally, I just said, forget it. And I applied to grad school for journalism. And once I got into grad school, I let them know like, hey, I'm a class short.
Right.
They contacted Howard and they were like, look, if he just does well this first semester, can we transfer those units so that he can completely graduate and be done with Howard? Because he clearly knows what he wants to do.
Right.
And yeah, they accepted it. And so set me on that path. So that was 2012. I got accepted to UC Berkeley Grad School of Journalism, studying documentary film. I knew I wanted to do film. I feel like that's the highest form of storytelling.
Yeah.
And I'd fallen in love with graffiti, just like the way stories are told through graffiti. And so I wanted to combine the two. And that's what I ended up doing.
Coming from Howard to Berkeley, what was that transition like?
Yeah, right? Woo, man. So Athenian prepared me for Berkeley more than anything. You know? Yeah. It also, it really gave me that understanding that like I could take the resources from this hillside and take it to the flatlands and tell the story down there. And so that's what I really did. Because I had that background in education, I could focus on OUSD reporting. I did that for a while. I also, one of the earlier projects, 2 projects that helped me get like my foot in the door was one, covering Oscar Grant's, both his death, the trial of Johannes Messerly, the community's reaction. And so I did something called the Grant Station Project, where I worked with a rapper named Young Gully from East Oakland. And he rapped songs from Oscar Grant's perspective about how the people felt, all that. And I did interviews in between the songs, you know? So I interviewed Oscar Grant's family and things
That was like
that.
a grad school project?
No, this was independent. We did that completely independent in 2010. So this is even before grad school.
Okay.
And then while I was at Oakland Tech, I started this project called OG Told Me, where it was a photo-based project where I was interviewing elders in the community, taking portraits of them and asking them for tidbits of wisdom. Like if you could talk to youngsters, what wisdom would you give them based on your life experience?
Right.
All that to say, that's the work that I was already doing before I got to Berkeley.
Yeah.
So I set the tone. I tell this to young journalists all the time, like, if you want to be a journalist, just go do it now so people can see what's in your mind, so people can see what you're cooking. And then they'll pay you on the back end for sure, but like if it's good. But, you know, you have to like, if you're a chef, you have to give some samples away first before people start paying for your food, you know?
Put your name out there.
Exactly, yeah. And so that was going on. Berkeley was, socially, Berkeley was a little bit awkward. I would still like drop my backpack off on Friday and then run to the town. I was living in downtown Oakland at the time. So
what years was this? Just to kind of
2012, 2014.
Okay.
I'm at Berkeley.
Okay.
Yeah. And so this is on the heels of Occupy. This is a lot of police shootings are just getting like after Oscar Grant, there's a number.
Okay.
And so that had already been on my radar, graduated, and then I had to go look for a job, man. You know, like that was the real hard part in journalism, is trying to stay afloat in this craft.
Right. So I wanted to ask you about something that you mentioned, because I'm interested in like where it came from. You talked about just going out and doing stuff, right? Like you weren't a quote unquote journalist yet, or you weren't a paid journalist yet, but you understood, or you had a desire to start doing that work already, right?
Yeah.
And now you tell other, young and up and coming journalists, like, you need to do this, right? But like, how did you get that you had to do that? What drove you to sort of do those things?
I'm sure having other journalists around definitely helped. Like I watched Davey D, I watched Sway, I watched, those types, and they weren't too far removed from me. So when I understood that, okay, I could send an email and talk to Renell at KMEL,
Right.
I was like, okay, this is tangible. It's actually something that can happen. And then looking at rappers in my circle, rappers and journalists, like there's a parallel there where like if I'm a rapper, especially at that time, I could make music in my room and print up a CD and just slang it out there. You know what I'm saying? And so as a journalist, I'm like, oh, I could come up with an idea, put it on a blog right now, and come up with stickers or something like that so people can go read my blog. It's not too far fetched. And after I get enough articles up, after I get enough singles up, I drop the album or I put the book out.
Right.
And so just seeing a lot of my friends who are artists, that really inspired me.
That's cool. And then, a lot of that is storytelling. It's a storytelling aspect in rapping as well. So there's like another kind of parallel as well.
Storytelling about the world around you and also the world within you. And so, there's a lot of parallels there.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you something. So going back to Howard, right? I've always heard DC and Detroit is kind of like sister cities with Oakland, right? I always hear kind of like Chocolate City, and they're like, oh yeah, that's like just like Oakland, right? I always hear a lot of things they have a lot of similarities and whatnot, right? So being out there in DC, what was the response from people when you said, yeah, I'm from Oakland?
Yeah, you get the old heads, but Oaktown, you know what I'm saying? Always that.
MC Hammer.
We don't call it that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, there was that. I think the fashion, there was a lot of parallels there. A lot of cats with dreads in DC.
Yeah.
And so I recognized that.
Peacoats?
Pico's, you got a North Face on, hella North Faces.
Okay.
Hella North Faces more than anything. But what would get me is that, like, sorry, DC, but like the gangsters would even like tie their jacket around their waist if they weren't wearing it. Right. And I was like, we can't do that in the town.
Right. Like, you looking sus. But
like the foams, hella foams. Their poetry scene was very much on par. A lot of revolutionaries born out of there. A chocolate city for sure. A lot of respect, you know, and an acknowledgement of what Oakland has gone through, and especially like understanding how the crack epidemic hit both areas. And so, yeah.
Was there like a contingent of Oakland or Bay Area folks that were there while you were there?
Yeah, one of my best friends, Chuck T, he's from the 80s. And so going out there with him is like, okay, we see eye to eye. And he lived on the south end of campus. I lived on the north end, so we could cover parties and whatever. Right. And then there was a group ahead of us. There was folks from Athenian who went there too. There was 3 or 4 other people who went there ahead of me. And then I had some cousins who lived in Maryland. And the fact that I wasn't too far from New York or Philly or Atlanta, that really helped. It broadened my perspective.
Not to go too far, but I always kind of wonder, like, how is that living in an area like, so you're in the DMV, right? And just how you said, you can reach all these other different cities not too far away, right? Yeah. So out here it's different, right? So we got the Bay Area, but if you want to go to another big area, LA or Vegas or whatever, it's a little stretch. Yeah. So how is that like, you know, being just an hour or two from Philly and New York and this and that?
As a resident assistant, my the head of the dorm dipped out of town for 3-4 days or something. I don't know, short stint, but he left me the keys to his car. So I drove to Dover Downs, which is like the Vegas of Delaware, and but it's not Vegas at all. It's like old retired white people. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just gambling for no reason. And then I drove to Philly for a cheesesteak, and then drove back. You know what I'm saying? Like all in one day.
I want to talk a little bit about some of the projects that you've done. I'm curious, is there a favorite project that you had that you've worked on? One that kind of like stands above the rest?
Yeah, I think OG Told Me is the one where I'm like, I'm really proud of myself because it was the first one. There's so many mistakes in it. It started off as a Tumblr. And like literally the high schoolers I was teaching, they would be on their phone looking at Tumblr. Right. And I'm like, I'll put something on there that's substantive.
How do I reach these kids?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Now, of course, they're looking at girls and I put pictures of old men on there. And I'm like, yeah, this will get them. Right. Nah, but sure enough, though, they were like, oh, I seen bro before. He be by the donut shop. I didn't know that's his name. I didn't know he's from the South. Right. Like, you know, and so I started to draw those community connections there. There was a lot of genius in that project, even though I didn't have the skills to do it as highly as I wish I could have, you know. It started out as a Tumblr project. It was all web-based, like portrait photo. I'd go up to an elder I'd see in the community. This could be a bus driver or somebody sitting on a clean Cougar or whatever, you know. And I'd be like, hey, that's a clean car. I'm a journalist. Can I ask you about your car? Also, if you have some wisdom to give the youngsters, what would you tell them? And I'd take that quote and I'd pair it with the photo and I'd place it online. And I did that for 5 years. And after a while, people were asking me like why I was doing this project. I was like, I guess it's kind of the way I grew up. I grew up without a father in the house, and then 8 of my friends didn't have fathers around either. And so we kind of quilted together our concept of manhood by way of the men that we talked to in the community. And so this is just an iteration of what we experienced growing up. And I realized like, oh, maybe I should actually write the book about our coming of age experience. And so the OG Told Me book is more of an essay-based book, 12 essays of pretty much each year of my life. I was only 12 years old. 12 years from like the time I jumped off the porch to the time I became an adult. And yeah, just looking at the dumb stuff we did and the lessons we learned along the way. I was talking to a class this past week about where OG Told Me came from, and it actually came from 11th grade science class where I'm frustrated because I'm flunking and I'm scribbling in my notebook. I'm like, man, I'm about to start my own religion. And I called it OGistic because like I had this belief that everybody is growing old, right? Like that's the one thing we can all believe in. Okay. And then I realized I got to scale this back a little bit. I can't start a religion as a teenager. So it turned into a photo essay. But that seed was planted while I was at Athenian.
That's wild. What class was that?
Lawrence. You remember old Lawrence, the science teacher, real old man?
Yeah, he was cool.
He was cool, but he was like,
environmental science, that's what it wasn't it?
Yeah, I couldn't even I was flunking. Okay. It was science.
Hey, so what was the deity for this religion?
You older.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So it's like a futuristic, forward, ancestral type.
The things that you're doing right now is in honor of who you will be.
Oh.
That's crazy.
I mean, because you know, if living right, and this is also the time of like Lil Wayne, Lil this, Lil that, Lil everybody, and I'm like, in 20 years, all these dudes still gonna be Lil.
Right.
Man, call me OG right now, and we're gonna establish it because 20 years from now, I'm gonna be OG. And so, and I've always been like the old soul type. You know what I'm saying? So I just kind of lean deeper into my personality.
Looking back, looking at yourself as a young journalist and some of the things that you went through, even in high school and whatnot, knowing what you were trying to do and having the wisdom that you have now, if you were able to kind of kick knowledge to your younger self, what kind of things would you want to say? What kind of message would you want to impart?
I would just instill confidence as much as possible. Like I think a lot of times I had genius ideas that I didn't act on because I wasn't confident. And so, yeah, it's weird now being a dad because I always be like, I'm probably not confident because, you know, I ain't have my dad to have my back. Right. But now I realize like a lot of fatherhood is just you being like, man, stop tripping. Get over that. You know what I'm saying? Like, man, I'm tired of you being on some BS. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so, yeah, I would have had that for myself. I would have told myself, stop tripping over that BS. You know what I'm saying? Just boss up and get it done. Now, even as of late, the motto that I'm dealing with this current political landscape with is do what you can. And do what you can both in the empowering way of like, if you can do it, go out there and do that. But also just do what you can. If you can't do it, it's all right.
I saw that on your IG, actually.
Yeah, that was my bio. I changed my bio once a week. Just like, what's my thought? Right now, it's my spirit animal is the 1995 Source Awards. That's how I feel about the world right now.
You ain't got no love for OGism.
Exactly. The South got something to say. Yeah, exactly. That's how I feel.
You're tired of Trump being all in the videos.
Yeah, I think that's interesting though, as far as confidence. And it's like, I think, because I talk to kids, like starting with my kids, but other kids as well. And I think a lot of times kids they're kind of scared to fail.
Yeah.
Right. And so I try to tell people that on the path of success, you will encounter failure.
Yep.
Right. So you don't let the failure define you. You know, it's how you deal with the adversity. I think that's how it should define a person or whatever. But a lot of times without having that mindset, you can just be about just failure or success. Right. And
black and white.
Yeah, exactly. And so sometimes people be like, oh, well, that might not work or whatever. And so they won't even try it.
I think my hesitation was that I didn't feel like I had the room for failure. So yes, and I was scared, but also the reason I went to Athenian because I realized like my sister hit the streets when she was 14. You know what I'm saying? Like getting money the fast way. And I saw what that did to my mom emotionally. And so I'm like, now if I'm 14 and I have this opportunity to go to this private school, then I got to lock in and I have no room for failure.
Right.
And so that kind of, I'm not going to step outside of this box. I'm not going to, I'm just literally do what I can at Athenian.
Right.
And try to get into school. And I didn't pursue rapping because of that,
Right.
I wouldn't say it like shuttered my confidence, but it made me less experimentational.
It's so called reality though, because it's just like being a black man, like
you don't have room to fail.
It's like you're saying like, man, I can't fail. And it was like, yeah, part of it is you really can't. It's just like you really wouldn't get a second chance. And so yeah, man, big up to you for recognizing that from a young age.
So what do you tell this kid though? You tell this young kid that hasn't experienced as much or whatnot, right? And they are scared to take that first step. Then so you should say, you just got to be confident, right? And maybe that's easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
So how do you help them build that confidence within themselves?
And tell them that you do have room to fail. And like that is the thing.
Yeah.
Like I had to learn that. Like a lot of my friends bumped their heads and then they got their stuff right at 25. But that means there's still time. There's plenty of life left to live,
Definitely.
And I wrote about it in the book. Like 14, 15, I was running through the 30s trying to sell dope. And I just couldn't bring myself to sell dope. And especially because I'm going to Athenian and I'm in East Oakland trying to sell dope.
Yeah,
I'm like, this doesn't make sense. I'm calling this woman auntie. She is somebody's auntie.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't do this.
Right.
And I knew that if I went to jail, I would lose that scholarship to Athenian, And so it's like, okay, this is where I don't have room to fail. And so when I locked in on journalism, I was like, okay, this is where I can flourish. And if there are any risks or gambles here, then let that be through experimenting in different media types and stuff like that.
Who are some of the people in your life that really help you build that confidence? Like whether it was a professor or a teacher or
yeah, good question. Editors. Okay. Editors can build or crush your confidence. And even when correcting me, I think I blame a lot of my typos on the fact that I went through K through 8 Oakland public schools. You know what I'm saying? But an editor not being like, oh, you're a trash journalist. Get out of here because you can't spell this word right. Then being like, no, I see your spirit. I see what you're trying to do. I'm going to help you use the right.
Hole in that page, nigga.
So I wasn't in class that day. I didn't, man, there's sometimes I spelled certain words. I just didn't know. I can't even explain. There are certain words where I'm like, oh, we don't say it that way, but in written form, that's how.
Yours kicking your ass up.
There. But editors. So Kev Weston, the late Kev Weston, he was a guy who worked for Youth Outlook, which was in the city. And at 18, 19, he would literally give me money. I mean, like checks. He would pay me checks to record on the back of the bus on the AC Transit. Because his explanation to me was that, like, you have a worldview that no one else has. And I was like, damn. You know what I'm saying? Now at this age, I like, that's really empowering because he was probably my age when he passed. And so Kev Weston, Nishat Kurwa, who was pretty much the head of podcast at Vox now, she just mentored me and just made sure that my writing was like heard. And she took me on my second international trip where we went to Ireland. And I saw the hoods in Ireland, the KIP, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I saw the conflicts in Ireland, you know, between Catholics and Protestants, and just broadened my worldview. So yeah, a lot of editors played a big part, teachers as well. Yeah, and then homies, you know, my partners. I think my first stuff got on NPR when I was 17 or so, and I was juiced because it was on NPR, but also my partners ain't listening to NPR, and they would still be like, that's tight, boy. You know what I'm saying? They would like kind of brag about me to other people, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm doing something right. I wanted myself on KMEL, but whatever. You know?
Do you feel like some of your friends, like from the hood and stuff, kind of saw what you were doing and tried to steer you away from the streets because they saw something more for you?
That's funny you said that. I got a partner I went to college with, and he was like, yeah, you was kind of like the protected one. And I was like, in college? We was all the protected ones. What are you talking about? But yeah, I think people just saw that I was, you know, kind of the brain on a path, and you know what I'm saying? And Mama Gayla is one of my best friend's moms, and she's kind of the hood mom. And we stole her car one night, and she coming down on everybody in line once we get caught, and she was like, "You're supposed to be the smart one," you know what I'm saying? And I'll never forget that. You know what I'm saying? Like, damn, she thought it was me the smart one. That's great. That's very sweet. I guess I picked that up, but yeah. Yeah.
I expected more from you.
Yeah, exactly. I was in the back seat. Can't even reach the pedals.
When I hear you talk about confidence in that way, it kind of reminds me a little bit of like, I guess what they call now imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Like feeling like, do I really belong in this environment, right?
Yeah.
I think it's natural to a degree. That slight twinge of fear or whatever kind of propels you to really be on your P's and Q's, right? But I also feel like as a black man in spaces where there's not a lot of people that look like me, there's probably a little bit extra behind that.
Yeah. It's like, I was talking to my friend about this. Imposter syndrome is kind of cool because you're not supposed to be there. I'm not supposed to be working for national public media. I'm not supposed to be in America. like, what do you mean? You know, like yeah. And so when I recognize that, it's like, it's very grounding. I've come to a spot where, so I guess if we're going chronologically, right?
Yeah.
So after I get out of grad school, the first full-time job that I get is with this company called Fusion. Fusion no longer exists, but at the time it was like funded by the Disney Corporation and Telemundo, and it was huge. It's corporate media, right?
Okay.
And their outlet in the Bay was focused on reporting on technology. And so I was supposed to report on like Silicon Valley and stuff like that. Man, I don't know nothing about Silicon Valley. Like, what do you mean? I write about Oakland. Like, this is what I do with the black community in Oakland specifically. And I tried my damnedest to try to make it work. And I wrote one home run hit of a story about the app or website Nextdoor. Y'all familiar with Nextdoor?
Yeah.
Nextdoor. And so I was talking about how Nextdoor racism 2.0 online, and that's been cited in books, and that's going far. But everything else I wrote was trash. And I worked there for like 9 months, right? And at the time I left, I had like keloids, but like my eye is swollen up and just because of the stress. Yeah, exactly. And I was trying to make it work because I didn't have that room for failure. And it's my first full-time job, benefits, $60,000, whatever. I'm here to try to feed the family, you know?
Yep.
And I couldn't recognize that, like, no, this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm really, really not supposed to be here. And I should have listened to that imposter syndrome, you know? I should have been like, oh, this isn't, or even just like, take it for what it is. I'm here for my learning experience. And after I'm done, I'm done. But trying to hold on to it and be like, no, $60,000, I need this. That wasn't healthy for me. And I had to learn the hard way that, okay, take the scenic route to a spot where I'm more comfortable.
That's interesting, right? Because it takes a certain amount of courage to be able to make that call. Because to your point, like, you've made it essentially. This is what school is all about: is to get your foot in the door. Now you've arrived, right?
Yeah.
So to be able to recognize, like, yeah, I've arrived, but maybe this isn't where I'm supposed to be, and then to go back out into the abyss. Because what's real is that, like, I still feel like there's like a thin line between me doing well as I am or whatever, and like my life looking very different.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And a lot of it is like the salary I'm getting.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it's like, so, and you know, I feel like maybe Black people in general are blessed with this perspective because we're typically so close to the edge. You know what I'm saying? Like, no matter how you grew up, you knew, like, you were never too far from, like, potentially some wild.
Like, don't get too comfortable.
Right.
The ice is thin.
Right, exactly. To a degree, you kind of carry that with you. And that puts a little bit of fear. You know, people talk about, like, I started my own startup. And, you know, it's like, sometimes, like, there's a level of, like, I'm going to use a loaded word, right? I'm gonna use the word privilege, right? Which I don't want people to get triggered or whatever. But, like, there's a certain amount of privilege that kind of goes into
being able to do
being
that.
able to say, like, you know what, I'm gonna drop out of school and I'm gonna just, like, work on this thing in my garage, because it's like, first of all, you got a garage, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? but you know, like, it's real. That's kind of what we're talking about when we're talking about the ability to fail, right? The person who's able to do that is somebody who can fail, and they understand that in their head, but also that's their reality, is that, they can try this startup and they can fail, and they can try again and they can fail, and you know what I'm saying? But
and then they call it ingenuity.
Right. Then they write the book about their failures and they sell that.
But, you know, a lot of times I'll say that, number one, I guess people perhaps with more of our backgrounds, the reality is that they don't have as much room for failure. Like, they just don't. But then also, mentally, because of that reality, they don't let themselves kind of, you know, it's more like, no, I need this. I need to sort of stay on this path. This path has been my salvation. This is the only salvation that I've known. This is the only way I've seen it work. You know what I'm saying? I can't, my crossover is whack. I can't freestyle. This is, you know what I'm saying?
This gotta
path,
work.
Yeah.
Right?
And you become stagnant because you're so locked in on that. You can't experiment. You can't become creative.
Right.
Yeah. And to your point, that 9 months at Fusion, it didn't end by my choice, right?
Okay.
So they let go of me.
Right.
And that was failure. That was my first taste of failure. And from that, I started just, like, I was doing social media for Oaklandish. I was writing for, like, the Chronicle and just here and there spots. I did a piece about security guards. I was always questioned about how, like, Black folks are so anti-cop, but also it's a lot of Black men who are security guards. How'd that come to be? And so that was kind of like, I'm like, all right, getting the ball rolling. I did a piece in National Geographic and traveled to China. And so, like, got the ball rolling again on my own accord. And that OG Told Me project was the one that, like, my editor at KQED now, he saw me doing that for free. And he was like, I love your voice. Why don't you just come do that at KQED and get paid?
Wow.
And so, again, you got to put some hamburgers out there for free so people can see what you're cooking.
Right.
Yeah. But that failure definitely catapulted me in the long scheme of things.
So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll come right back with some more of this dope conversation. So what we want to do right now, we thought might be a little fun activity. We wanted to do, like, a little rapid fire from a couple of questions that we posed to ourselves and answered in some of the past episodes. So one of the episodes that we did a couple episodes ago was called Full of Gems. Basically talked about different places in Oakland, places that were gone that we miss, new places that were here that we enjoyed, and then classic spots that we still frequent. So is there a gone place that you miss in particular to put you on the spot, Penn?
The first place that popped into my mind, I don't even think I really miss it, but it's gone and I think about it often, is Quick Ways.
Like 64.
If you had Quick Ways, you should probably get a check when you turn 18. Like, there's some stuff to your health. Exactly. Probably. Exactly.
You ate a whole chicken and fries.
1994.
Man,
triple cheeseburger.
the corn dogs. I don't know what I was. I'm glad I'm here.
Man. He's like, I don't miss it. I'm just driving by.
Right. I used to go to the one on Lakeshore.
Lakeshore, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Right, it's Vegan Mob now. Or
It was
now
Vegan Mob,
yeah.
Now it's Influx. It's going to be apartment soon one day.
Right.
Probably.
So that's the first thing that pops into my mind. There's so much that has changed that like I just got used to it, you know? Just get used to your spot not being there anymore. And I think what really gets me is when you go down the street and they change how the direction, the flow of the traffic, or they put up a barrier there, or something has changed about the way you navigate the street. Like, it didn't used to be this way, and I feel like that old man.
Yeah, 4 bike lanes?
Yeah,
Man, all the cones. I mean, all that what they did on East 14 is crazy.
The
man.
bus lanes?
One lane and the bus lane.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
And so, just having to like learn the city that I knew so well anew is always a little confusing, you know?
Right.
You said new spots, huh?
Yeah, that's the next one. So a new spot that you enjoy.
Like how new we talking? You know?
Maybe last 5 years, maybe.
All right.
Or we can go deeper. I mean, if you got a spot you want to call out, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean,
we had honorable mentions and everything. So if you got a couple spots,
Lucky 37 is my spot.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Lucky 3, and it's been there for a minute, so that's what's like how new.
right?
Lucky 37 is. I'm glad it's there. You know, like that's a stress relief.
Lumpia
What's your go-to?
Lumpia is
The
on
G for the
That's
wings.
it. That's all you need.
The lumpia, I'm not even a fan of that lumpia like that.
Okay.
That's all
I
you
love
need.
y'all, but you know what I'm saying? Like, no, the wings, yeah. It's one of them, like, as you eat, you normally like start to be like, all right, I don't need any more food. You know, your appreciation level starts. Now with them G-Fire wings, you're like, they get better. You know what I'm saying?
I get hungrier as I get fuller.
Newer is also Chingones. Chingones is a restaurant that was out of Fort Greene. Fort Greene is a bar that's in Old Oakland. And so they were serving out of Fort Greene for a while, and they just opened up their own headquarters this week.
The one that's on like 4th and Jackson?
It's in Jack London Square now.
Yeah, I know exactly what right around the way.
Chingones with the X. I don't know how to fully spell it, but
Yeah, I think I have seen that.
last week.
Yeah. So that's a dope spot.
Okay.
And I went to Sweet Green. That was cool. I went there last week.
Yeah,
my first
on
time.
9th and Broadway.
Yeah.
Sweet Green is like that's my. It's funny you mentioned that because I basically eat the same thing for lunch every day, and it's a sweet green salad. But it's good, and it's like for me, it keeps me like if I'm eating the salad every day for lunch, then I can go ham a little bit on the weekends. You know what I'm saying? And like and I don't have to trip. So
yeah, that's me with like dine. I mean, I spend so much time outside of the house.
Right.
I have to try to like not eat bread at every meal.
Right. The things that the meals you can control when you're not drunk and you know what I'm saying? Like make those as healthy as you can. That way,
sure.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I learned that in New York.
Yeah.
Anyways.
And classic spot is all the nature. You can change nature, but it's still there. And so I like Point Emory at the very end of Emeryville. I like Diamond Park, MLK Shoreline Park in the east, Strawberry Canyon. I do a lot of I literally will say I need some nature time. And I just walked around Lake Temescal last week just to soak it in just for a minute and then get back to work.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's interesting. We didn't really touch on nature when we did that.
No, not so much. And then we're right in the center of a lot of beautiful nature. Like you go up to the hills, Joaquin Miller, and you know all that stuff up there, and all over. It's a lot of good parks.
That's what we're paying for. I mean, that's
right.
the access to that. Yeah. And I probably didn't recognize how beautiful it was until I moved to Sacramento. And Sacramento has its own nature, but it's really flat.
Yeah, it's flat and brown.
It's flat and brown, and hot in the summertime. And so the fact that you can go hiking year round out here, and you can actually walk up a hill, like Sacramento, the perspective doesn't change unless you go over an overpass. And so, like I need that. Sometimes I'll go to the bay at sunset, and I'll go to the hills at sunrise. You know, like and yeah.
Do you ever take like your daughter hiking and things like that?
Yeah, she gets sick of it. Well, she's like, I don't want to go. I don't want to. And then next thing you know, she's out there with a stick and be like, this is the princess. We have to protect. You know what I'm saying? She's like in full imagination mode after a minute.
Right. Yeah, I definitely appreciate the nature too. And that's one thing that since I've come back from New York that I've like kind of tapped back into, because in New York, I was living in New York City. And so like New York, you could drive a couple hours and, you'd be in upstate, and they have different kind of spaces to hike and all that kind of stuff. But it's more of like a mission. It's like, okay, now I'm going to drive for 45 minutes or an hour or whatever. And out here, it's like, you can go to East Oakland and then make a turn, and now you go up the hill a little bit, and you got all kinds of places to hike. And
I get to my meeting 15 minutes early, and I'm just like, let me bounce out real quick and go take a little picture of this. Right. Yeah, and Sibley volcano. Y'all familiar with that?
No. Mm-hmm.
There's an old prehistoric volcano in the back of North Oakland.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
I went on a field trip there, like in 4th grade.
Yeah, dang! I just hit a core memory right there.
I don't think I remember anything.
Somebody like Temescal? Is it like Temescal or something?
No, I go up past Montclair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Snake Road.
Yeah.
And I guess it kind of converges with Skyline. Yeah,
okay.
If you were to
I go hiking over there sometimes. There's like Skyline Pass or whatever it is. So that's okay.
Yeah, it's one of the best places, and I'm like, I didn't know about this my whole life. I've been around this area, but yeah, in my younger adulthood, I found that spot, and I was like, man, this is one of the best ones.
You said it's non-active volcano?
Non-active.
Yeah. I always wonder about that, right? Because it's like, how do they?
I don't know if it's active or not.
Right? Like, how do they? Because every volcano was right. I remember thinking about that. I took we went to Hawaii for our baby moon, so before my wife gave birth or whatever, our last trip, and we were like, oh, should we go like do one of these volcano tour things? Like, oh, these are dormant volcanoes, but it was kind of like the way they said it was like it could like it's probably like nothing's
dormant for now.
Yeah, right. And so I'm kind of just like, oh, okay. And so we didn't end up doing it, but
yeah,
I always think about that. Okay, I think that was the 3, right? You gave
that was 1 3. Yep,
okay,
yep.
Okay. All right. Well, another episode that we did, it was actually a 2-parter. It's called Oakland is a Professional Sports Desert. We talked about the departure of the 3 teams, the A's, Raiders, and the Warriors, going over to San Francisco, obviously. So a couple quick questions from that one. For you, which of those 3 team departures hurt you the most, and why?
Remember, there's only one right answer.
Only one right answer? What do you mean? The departure that hurt me the most wasn't a team leaving. It was the A's trading Yohannes Cespedes. 2014. That's when I gave up on them.
Ooh.
They were independent. They made the playoffs. Okay, little handshake. You felt that one in the heart?
Not alone.
Okay.
Not alone.
I was in
I'm
China.
not alone
They
because
didn't have to do that.
boy,
And they traded him for the pitcher from Boston.
man.
John Lester, and
Lester, but
it didn't pan out. And
He was the best playoff pitcher
Man, okay.
in history at the time.
But it didn't pan out, and it just didn't look good.
That
and then
team
you traded
World
your
Series
youth team.
bro.
I mean your young star.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't have did it, but I understood why they do it because they wasn't going to sign him anyway. So they weren't going to sign Cespedes. So they're like, let's get something. Yeah, let's get something for him,
But it's still
instead of just straight losing him. But
I mean, then you lost Lester too,
you did.
and so
You did.
I felt like they gave.
And when he was here, his ERA was like, could buy cigarettes.
His ERA could buy cigarettes. It's crazy.
For real. He's getting smacked around.
So yeah, that's when I kind of really gave up on the A's. And I've been following them, like the manager, the owner trying to get out of Oakland, and so that's definitely when I stopped wrapping my mind around like loving a team and just like started following the individual players, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna follow Josh Johnson, I'm gonna follow Marshawn, I'm gonna follow, Juice Man, like the individual players from Oakland who I could really identify with, and because in sports you kind of get lost in the world, right? And so I'm gonna get lost in the world of this one individual player as opposed to this team.
Have you been able to do anything with the Thompson twins yet?
Nah, I was watching them. Man, that Rockets game, it was actually kind of frustrating. The Rockets-Memphis game 2 nights ago. They were I said it's frustrating because they kept hacking both teams. Hella fouls. But they're awesome. My latest story, I'm coming out of an interview with Quentin Thomas. Y'all familiar with Quentin Thomas?
Yeah.
Quentin Thomas was a UNC star, basketball player, 2000.
When he's there with like Raymond Felton and them?
7, 8. He comes in right before Tyler Hansbrough.
Tyler Hansbrough.
He overlaps with Tyler. But
he was there like with like
I forget
Ty Lawson and Ray Felton right around that era.
they get the national title.
Yeah.
Sean May and all that.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, that sounds about right. I talked to him about just that network that catapulted him to being able to be a part of the UNC team. And he balled out there. He was the winningest player in UNC history. And it wasn't that he was just the baller. He just happened to be on really good teams, and he was supportive. But he wasn't on a bench rider either.
Right. So he was there 4 years then.
4 years, balled out. And he also got signed to Ninth Wonders label, Jamala. And so he was rapping and just has this great story. He has kind of a Forrest Gump story. He was like, oh, yeah, I was with that person. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Leon Poe is my big homie and all this like stuff. But talking about the sports and the spirit within the town and how even with the departure of all the professional teams, there's still a competition here. There's still, like, you got to make it through Oakland. If you're in the Bay Area and you want to be a hooper, you got to make it through Oakland. And that's forever going to be there. And I was like, that's really tight. And so, while it does hurt to see the teams leave, I guess my answer with teams leaving would be the A's because I'm a baseball head. Was that the right answer? Okay, I was saying. That
was the right one.
Yeah, because somebody said there's only one answer. It's like, oh, you must be a Raiders fan. The Raiders for sure hurt. I always felt like the Raiders, like, come on, like, y'all remember when the Raiders didn't sell out and they wouldn't broadcast locally?
Yeah, them blackouts.
Yeah, that was my childhood.
What do you mean I can't see my favorite team? And
listening to Raider games on the radio was my childhood.
You like, damn, the Raiders at home. Raiders at home, damn.
Yeah, exactly. You can hear
it. Go watch this.
You can hear it. Like, they're right here. Like, that's crazy, man. And then
used to Jacksonville versus Indianapolis.
And now you know that now they don't. Now that's illegal. They don't do that anymore. They changed the rules. They don't do blackouts anymore.
That's crazy, man. And then the Warriors, seeing them leave, I think that really hurt my right hand man a lot. Zeus, the fact that he was working on the team, and so a lot of the people who worked for the team lost jobs as the team moved across the bay.
So they just didn't bring people with. Okay.
Yeah, and at that point they had already won a couple championships. You got to imagine that like Zeus and the dunk team were kind of the entertainment when the Warriors were horrible.
When it was just a great timeout.
Right, when they were on Channel 36. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, I think that hurt him. But I understood that. That's a smart business move. If you own the building and you're in the bigger market and like you doing all that, like, do that. I get it. And plus, they're still in the Bay, you know?
We touched on this, actually.
Yeah, so I think the A's, the A's had hurt us for so long. And the final one was just like, and then Ricky passed. It all hurt ultimately.
Right.
And I think what it hurts me the most is the workers, the folks who no longer are employed.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
A lot of jobs lost.
Yeah. So the other question from that episode that we wanted to get your opinion on, we did this exercise where we tried to rank the Oakland legacies of the three franchises, right? And I think, I'm trying to remember now what the criteria that we gave for quote unquote Oakland legacy, but I think we basically said like you felt like the team, so you felt like Oakland claimed that team, you felt like the team claimed Oakland, and then kind of like when you think about that, like when you maybe outside of Oakland, when you think about Oakland, if you're not from there, you think about that team perhaps.
Yeah, damn. I mean, it'd be the Raiders. It'd be for sure the Raiders, like the black hole, and like I mean, the fact when Marshawn was on the team, that game where Marshawn played against Juice Man was on what team at that time? Kansas City. He was playing against Kansas City, and after the game, Marshawn gets kicked out. Marshawn gets kicked out of that game. He ends up in the stands for a minute watching the game, and then ends up catching Bart after the game with the fans. What? Like, that's crazy. And so like that type of connection, Charles Woodson, like Marshawn interviews him recently on a podcast, and he talks about like, I thought you was from the town, just from the swagger he had. Right. And so that connection, being younger, I would always just identify with James Jett, you know what I'm saying? Jim Brown, that wasn't it, Tim Brown. T. Wheatley. Like, the personality of the Raiders definitely I identify a lot with. And I will say at the same time, I identified heavily with the failures of the 90s Warriors teams, though. You know what I'm saying? Like Billy Owens and Chris Gatling. Like, I was like, mediocre. I can understand how Oakland could rock with that. Like,
you didn't.
They weren't mediocre. They couldn't do it all every night, man.
They would make three quarters worth of good basketball.
Kind of point of professional basketball is to be able to do it every night.
You get paid every night.
That's kind of why they get paid.
I mean, obviously they were good with TMC and all of that, right? But that's a little. I was really little, you know. Yeah. So by the time I come around, it is Chris Webber, Latrell, and then it's a little dark area.
Now, if you were saying
until
Felton Spencer, rest in peace, I'd understand, but I don't know. I've seen Billy Owens. Billy Owens was raw to me. His game was nice.
That's why I remember him. I don't remember everybody else from the team, right?
Yeah.
But before the We Believe years, there was a real dark period in there, with like Vonteego Cummings. You know what I'm saying? The David Lee trade is when
I forgot about that too.
Being like, oh, okay, this is actually a place people want to play. David Lee is an all-star. What do you mean?
No, I remember when they did the Baron Davis trade, and I was like, wait, you talking about Baron Davis? From that Baron Davis?
Right.
We about to have a real name player? I was like, wow. I said, damn, I remember me and him was talking. I said, man, they need to just sit that fool for the rest of the year, because remember, he was injured at the time of the trade.
Okay.
They say, sit that fool for the rest of the year. The trade was completed, everything. That fool played the next game. I was like, damn. But I didn't know how the NBA dudes move like that. They're like, nah, I'm injured, bro. He got traded. He was playing. I think I had said something like the Oakland A's, I think the city bought into them the most. But as far as like when the Raiders were winning, Oakland was a football town.
Oh my God.
For sure.
The sideshows during like that 02.
Oh, yeah, when they went to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah. No, I was up there.
What? Yeah, on top of the bus and stuff.
Hey, I had a crazy story. We was at Booker's, and so it was just going nuts that night, right? Sideshows going crazy. So we had Booker's, and it was just packed. So we're there for about 20 minutes. Then by the time, so after about 20 minutes, whole 90th was just cars in the middle of the street. Everybody just parked in the street and just jumped out their cars, right? And so 90th was blocked. And so we out there, we kicking it, going crazy. And AC Transit bus come stop by the thing. 20 police jump out the bus.
Oh no!
Right. And so they threw a tear gas bomb. Right. And so they threw a tear gas bomb in the like middle of the crowd, and it ended up going it came in my car window and blew up like right in front of my face, blew my hat off my head, all this old stuff. And so it was going. So we had a wild night that night, so to say the least. We all was face burning up. We rode around. We ended up stopping in some random house. Everybody just went to their front yard, and we got the water hose. Everybody just spraying their face. It was bad. But so long story short, only reason I bring that up is because the next week when they was going to the Super Bowl, we said, nah, we out of here, man. We went to San Diego and was kicking it down there.
Smart move.
We come back. And so we left like right after the game because the Raiders got beat up bad and everything. So we out of here. We come back. The town was smoking. We like, what the hell? It was still on fire. Like the fires was going out. Yeah. We drove past McDonald's and all the windows busted out, smoke coming out. I was like, what the hell went on out here? But I was always thinking like, now just imagine. Now it was bad they lost, but just imagine if they would have won the Super Bowl. Would it have been worse or better? In the East, like would the sideshow been?
It'd been worse.
It'd have been
more people outside.
Got all that energy.
Yeah.
It might have been less stuff getting. It would have been less vandalism.
That's true. It probably would have been less.
It would have just been a lot of elation and like
because it was cars flipped over and I'm like, damn, it looked like a straight war zone. Cause we got back, we pulled up. It was like 4 or 5 in the morning or something like that. We like I don't even recognize these streets right now.
This is super off topic, but. You just reminded me of it, and I thought it was the funniest thing. I mean, well, whatever. So I was watching Terminator 1 the other day, right? And there's a scene, you know how like they'll show scenes of the future, and it's just like, you know, these T1 machines walking across skulls and stuff like that. So there's a part where they're just showing how kind of destitute it is, and these kids. So they pan from the front, and these kids are like huddled around this TV, like watching the TV intently. And it's like, so you see the back of the TV, and you see the kids' faces, and they're just like looking at it. And it kind of pans over. And then it shows the back, from the back, the TV is busted out, and there's a fire in the TV, and they're just watching the fire. Like that's, and I saw that, I was like, that's some cold. Like, damn. This future is bleak. Anyways,
Octavia Butler type shit. Also, to ask you a point about like investment in the town and like who did the town love in terms of teams, the town has always loved the individuals from the town.
For sure. The
He
players
asked me about the Thompson twins and like I just
Ricky's, Dave Stewart.
just came from Ricky's memorial and Dave Stewart was there and
wow.
and so I mean it was star studded. Everybody there. Reggie Jackson was there, but yeah, like the outpour has always been for the individuals from the town.
That's true.
All right, so I guess the last section that we wanted to pivot to was talking a little bit about your relationship with Oakland and hearing you reflect. So I guess to kick that off, maybe you could talk a little bit about what your experience was like growing up in Oakland, and then sort of a follow-up to that, what's been your experience as you travel now, traveling all over the world, being from Oakland?
Okay, I mean, I'm not originally born in Oakland. I was born in Columbus, Ohio, and so I moved out here when I was 3. So I don't know anything about Columbus, Ohio, right?
You know, it's a trip. I'm gonna stop you right there. So both of our parents are from Columbus, Ohio.
Oh yeah,
I didn't know.
Yeah. Okay. What side of town? Y'all know?
The cold part.
The cold part.
With all the bricks.
With all the bricks.
That's crazy. No,
And our mom is actually from Toledo.
Oh yeah. Damn.
Like
Yes,
Ohio strong.
in Detroit, partly in Ohio, and then she came out here when she was like, what, 12 or something like that?
That Ohio diaspora. Everybody was like, "It's cold. I'm out."
Right.
Yeah. My family had deep history in Ohio. My grandfather was a prominent black architect, and my great grandfather was one of the first black lawyers.
Your grandpa definitely knew our grandpa.
Yeah, that's wild.
For sure.
Yeah, he was a chemist, and he worked at
Ohio State.
Ohio State.
Yeah.
So he was also the president of the NAACP of the Columbus chapter.
So yeah, definitely. So my great grandfather was a black lawyer who worked with Thurgood Marshall.
Well,
Brown
we got
Brown
letters
education and
from
shit.
we got some letters from Thurgood Marshall to my grandpa.
Are we related? Like, I know we talking about the same person. Hold on, cuz.
Civil rights stunt
Exactly, right? Hold on. Happy Black History Month, my nigga.
My grandpa,
Adam Clayton Powell
Right,
passed me a cigarette in 47.
All right, but
that's
but
cool
like, so y'all would recognize with this, where like how Oakland, especially like if you're from a neighborhood and your granny been from that neighborhood, then you have a certain mystique. You know what I'm saying? Like I know people who've been from the bottoms for 3 generations, and so I'm coming out here at 3 years old, and my family ain't tied into no neighborhood like that or nothing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know exactly
So-
how you. Yeah, I know the same feeling.
Okay, so yeah, and
More
so,
than you know.
right? Exactly. And so there's a level of me having to get to know the community, you know. And so I lived first Lake Merritt, then High Street, then Keller Hill, then Skyline, then Harrison, South Berkeley, Richmond, and then Apgar, and all this other. So I lived all around the town, right, and also East Bay. But it was my time in middle school that really introduced me to what the town was all about. I went to Edna Brewer Middle School, which is Edna Brewer. I remember her. Like, right? That's what
They
he said.
changed the name. It's isn't it Montier or
It was McChesney, and they changed
McChesney? And they changed it to
Edna Brewer.
Edna Brewer. That's right. That's
Exactly.
Right.
So I was probably 2nd generation Edna Brewer student, right? And that introduced me to the Dubs, that neighborhood over there by Highland Hospital, right? And so learning the Dubs was like, I was a Tupac fan growing up, and I would throw up West Side because Pac told me to. And I started hanging out in the Dubs, and it was like, don't throw up a W over here.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, this is how you throw up the Dubs. And also, this means High Street. This means that. And I was like, oh, these hands mean different things. You know what I'm saying? I got it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so that introduced me to the turfs of the town, you know, like how the neighborhoods work. And once I learned that, then I started to navigate it differently. Then I started to know how to move through the house parties, through the functions, the candy shop functions, what have you. And I also learned my place where I'm like, okay, I get like the 3-letter gangs is doing this, and the dope boys is over here, and the pimps is over here. And I can navigate those different worlds, but also I'm not going to be seated at anybody's table. You know, I'm going to kind of do my creative art thing over here. And people gave me room for that. And I mean, there's a lot of folks who had one foot in the streets, but one foot like in the artist world too. And Oakland is also, it's a hotbed for nonprofits, number of nonprofits. And so those nonprofits worked as like community centers or just community groups to help people who were budding artists. And so I found a lot of like-minded individuals by the time I was 17, 18. And I think that kept me out of trouble too. So that's how I really learned Oakland, and like my perspective on the town was really formed.
when you go abroad or when you travel throughout the country or throughout the world, when you say I'm from Oakland, do you feel like there's a perception, or do you feel like there's a certain kind of reception, or do you feel like being from Oakland has like perhaps opened other doors, giving you a perspective that allows you to move through some of these spaces in a different way than if you had just, I don't know, had moved to Fresno or something like that? No,
a lot different.
No shots of Fresno. You know what I'm saying?
No,
I'm just saying. Like,
it depends on where I am. Like I can say that I've had times where I was in Brooklyn, like at a house party in Brooklyn, and being like, "Yeah, I'm from Oakland." They're like, "Oh, it's all good, passing the bud," like no problem. Same thing with Atlanta, very accepting. I've been to Ghana internationally. I've been to Ghana, China, Ireland, and Senegal. And when in Ghana, I remember telling somebody that I was from Oakland, California. They was like, "Oh, I love California. Tupac, my nigga, what's up?" Like, whoa, don't like the way you said nigga. Like, it bothers me. But also, that's my dad. I'm 3 Pac. Pleasure to meet you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm gonna play off of it. Yeah. So yeah, that it's very known. And people have perceptions of Oakland. I think what really gets me is when people would move to Oakland. So for a long time, I was living in downtown Oakland, and people who I knew from Howard or whatever would move out to Oakland, and they'd be like, "Yeah, take me to Huey P. Newton's house." And I'm like, look, let me break this down to you, right? Like, there's a lot of mystique. There's a lot of allure about Oakland, and just trying to demystify stuff for people who've like visited. I think that was something I really took ownership of.
What ways would you say that Oakland has influenced all the directions that your life has gone and who you've turned into today?
Yeah. When I came in, I sat down, I looked at that board right there, and there's a picture of Huey and Bobby, and and I can very clearly see Erica Huggins' name on that board.
Yeah.
Mama Erica is somebody who I could call right now. It's like, that's crazy to me. She's a legend.
Right.
And she will answer the phone if I call, And like, to have accessibility to somebody like that, who's a name with that type of recognition, and then when you talk to her, you understand the type of wisdom that she has as somebody who had to navigate the things. I mean, she was targeted by the government as a young adult. You know what I'm saying? And like to be able to have that, and her also see me and being like, "No, you're special." You know what I'm saying? That definitely bestows the confidence that we were talking about, right? And like, I was already on my path when I met her, but when I sat down and talked to her, and she was like, "No, I'm willing to talk to you and also stay in contact," and and like, she's one of the best stories I've ever been able to come across is the story of this guy named Watani Steiner. You ever get a chance, look up Watani, Watani, Watani Steiner. He and his twin brother they served time in connection with the murder of Erica Huggins' husband, John Huggins. John Huggins was shot on the campus of UCLA
down there
along with Bunchy Carter.
Yeah.
So they were Black Panther leaders who were caught up in the mix, and the Steiner brothers were a part of this group called the US Organization, United Slaves. Yeah. That's the organization that brought us Kwanzaa. They had bald head. Karanga, exactly. And so when I say they served time, it's disputed if they actually pulled the trigger, but they were incarcerated in San Quentin. Watani and his brother escaped San Quentin. They end up in Suriname and Guyana in South America.
Okay.
Watani already had kids out here, and stuff is going awry in South America. Watani turns himself back in San Quentin. The same day that OJ is running from the police, he turns himself back in. He goes back to San Quentin, serves another 20 years or so. And while he's in San Quentin, he's writing in the San Quentin newspaper a column called From an OG's Perspective. At the same time, I was at UC Berkeley writing OG Told Me. We meet at San Quentin.
Oh, wow.
I start talking to Watani about his life and everything he's been through, and he tells me I need to get in contact with Erica Huggins. I talked to Erica Huggins about the other side of things because essentially, theoretically, Watani took her husband, right? Watani and Erica have this connection where it's all built around restorative justice and understanding that there were larger forces at play, and they've navigated it, they've been in contact. It's to the point that Watani's grandchild and Erica Huggins' grandchild attended the same elementary school in LA, and they didn't even know it. So the universe has connected them in multiple ways. And it's just one of these fascinating stories about like life, perseverance, Black folks, like all these things. And Erica Huggins is just so like, I'm serene, just peaceful about it, like so meditative. And she's a very tall woman. And to hear her and see her and her candor as she talks about it, is the most fascinating things, man. And so when I think about like what Oakland has showed me, it's really like through people like her, a world-renowned name who is like accessible. Like she's just auntie, you know, like that kind of thing. And so it's really dope.
One of the things that we've kind of talked around, I don't know that we've ever called it out explicitly on any of the episodes, but the level of like authenticity that exists here, thinking about somebody like Erica Huggins just being accessible to you, right? And being authentic with you and not being too busy or too big or whatever. There's a lot of stories kind of like that about people having time for people and also people just being real.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it's something that like the Bay and Oakland is different in that way than other places that I've traveled. This is not to throw shade at any other place, right? Like,
are you talking about LA? But no, I hear this comparison all the time, right?
Well, yeah, and I'm not trying to do that, but I'll say, like, for me, one of the distinguishing characteristics of Oakland has been people's authenticity. I mean, you as an example, just being super accessible, being willing to come on this podcast, like share everything that you can, you know what I'm saying? That energy, I think, is something that exists here and a lot of people are kind of like circulated. And so
it was taught to me. Like I said, I was teaching a class of all 9th graders and I hit Mr. Fab, platinum plaques. And, you know, I'm like, this dude is famous.
Right.
And he come in, no problem, and talk to these dudes. And I was like, I need you to talk to these dudes about manhood. He comes in and talks about getting manicures. And I'm like, manicures? I'm 23. Like, this isn't manhood. He talks about, like, upkeep and, like, taking care of yourself. And, and I'm like, okay, I get it.
Looking at your work, I think one of the themes is the perspective of Oakland from people that are not from Oakland and whatnot, right? You kind of want to change that perception to outsiders, right? So I wanted to ask you, what image or like idea do you want to reflect, or what do you want people to think about Oakland from seeing your work?
The real side of things, like why? Why are these things happening? Why are there so many unemployed people? Well, let's backtrack. Let's look at the education system and how that wasn't funded properly. You know, like, let's break this down. Let's celebrate diversity, but also let's talk about all the war-torn countries that people came from and found sovereignty here.
Right.
And learn how to coexist. And so now I have Panamanian partners. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's talk about that. Like, and so, I would love the full context to be shown. Like we talked about, I mean, it might have been off air. I don't know if the tape is running, but there is some that happens in Oakland. Like, unfortunately, there is traumatic things that happen. It's a Saturday. Unfortunately, something will happen tonight.
Right.
Let's talk about how that gun might have come across state lines in Nevada, you know, from Nevada. You know what I'm saying? Let's talk about like how that person might have had unaddressed mental health issues, what have you. You know, like, let's really like pull apart the details as opposed to just seeing another headline plastered of like Oakland does bad again.
Right.
And so like as a storyteller, I feel like it's a waste of time to keep telling the same story. Let's get to the root of some things. Let's pull some things apart. And so, you asked me like what story would I want to be told. I would want a more authentic depiction of what's happening here.
But what is that? What is an authentic depiction?
A nuance happening. It's a world where people are coming from East Africa and South America and, you know what I'm saying, and the South, U.S. South, and looking for a better world. And so many people were promised things. And we were black folks were told this land was paved in gold. You know what I'm saying? And like a lot of folks came out here during that great migration and expected something other than the South, only to find the same police that were policing them in the South up here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And what we're seeing now with this next great migration is just another iteration of that. We talked about people being pushed to Pittsburgh and Antioch, and now what city is under a federal police monitor? Antioch. Yep, right. The same way that Oakland has been under a federal police monitor for 2 decades. And so like you're seeing that same iteration again and again. And it's complex, it's nuanced, and that's like, it's a lot of layers to it. And sometimes, to your point, I'm like, I want to step outside of Oakland. I feel like if I tell a story about Lodi, you know, if I tell a story about another city in Northern California, I wanted to speak to a broader human issue. That's what I've done a lot of Oakland stories, and I've even looked at Oakland as like a lab, you know, like I can do my social experiments here, but now I want to do more universal stories, and just for my own sake, step outside of Oakland a little bit. But there's a lot of just nuances and layers and stuff, and I was listening to this podcast about the diversity of rock formations in Oakland. and how it's one of the most diverse places for rocks. And I was like, what? But it's because of the volcano. It's because of the quarry. It's because of ships coming in, bringing stuff in through the bay, bringing it to the top. It's like, there's so much here. It's like, that's fascinating to me. A new way to look at Oakland.
Right.
And so, yeah, just all the different nuances, man.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's important because we have kind of a national narrative right now. So much is about like clickbait and stuff like that. So a lot of people, unless you're really into that world or whatever, people are, these up and coming artists are doing this and that and that. A lot of people like, they say, oh man, it was 5 people shot over the weekend, and people they're gonna read that story.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So
and that gets branded in people's minds. And I mean, I hear it in like there was like the other guys or like something like Owen Wilson or something like that. And he said it in a quick line. He's like, man, I know a pimp from Oakland.
No, I know it's Wedding Crashers.
Wedding Crashers.
When he's talking about what they wish they could be. Oh, I wish we could be pimps from Oakland, but we have to, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, that's the line. It's branded, you know what I'm saying? And it's like that brand is almost too good. And I mean, yes, there are pimps out here. I get it. And also, let's talk about like the situations that led to them pimping the same women they grew up with. You know what I'm saying? Might have even been an ex-girlfriend or a future wife. You know what I'm saying? Like,
baby mama.
Right, exactly. And then how do women get into that lifestyle? And like, you know, like there's so much more to be told than just the headline. Yeah,
man. Well, keep it up, man. You've been doing a great job, man.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, it feels like it's a lot more work to do, but I think ultimately I'm having fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what matters, man. Like I tell people my motto is take your time, do it right, and that's like take your time. This is mine. Do it. Go out and experience the world right with the W. Take your time, do it right.
All right, so 2 real quick ones. You mentioned, or I don't know if you mentioned or not, but you don't live in Oakland anymore. You live in Sac now.
Right.
Are there things that you miss about living in Oakland?
See my folkers in traffic. Say what's upper. That E40 line, right? I don't see nobody I know in Sacramento. Like I write out what I'm going to do that day. Grocery store, tire change, and I do exactly that, and I come home. That's so boring and mundane. In Oakland, I could be like, yeah, I'm going to just go to the grocery store. And I would see 5 people on the way to the grocery store. And one of those people would be like, hey, run with me real quick. And then I'm on a whole nother mission. It started off to get tacos. The next thing I know, you know what I'm saying? Like,
2 days later.
Exactly. I'm on a boat. Like, Catalina Island. You know what I'm saying? But like, so I miss seeing my people. And so I came out here specifically today because I was like, all right, I see it's about to rain all next week. I'm going to be in Sacramento in the house with my kid and my cat. Let me come out here and just get some homie time. Right. And so, yeah, I just wanted to be around my folks for a minute. And so I appreciate y'all. You know what I'm saying?
Man, appreciate you.
And so, yeah, I really miss seeing my peoples. I mentioned earlier the changes in elevation. That really bothers me in Sacramento about how it's all flat. Especially I bike a lot.
Okay.
And so back in the day, I would like bike from Apgar up to Caldecott Tunnel and just like look out over the bay and then bike back down, you know? Can't do that in Sac. And I miss being able to go outside at 3:00 in the summertime. You just can't. 115 degrees. You don't go outside
because it's always a good like 15 degrees warmer in Sac than whatever it is in
at least.
Yeah. There's 30 days in between July and August where you're gonna catch 100-degree days constantly, and it's just like you ask my partner, what do folks in Sac do? He's like, man, get you a flat screen. Like, I didn't even have a TV till I moved to Sac.
Oh wow!
I didn't, because I would be outside all the time.
Right.
And so, yeah, now I have a flat screen.
So now I have social media.
Right, exactly. Now I have a belly. Like,
all right, and then the other side of that coin, what don't you miss about living in Oakland?
I can't say that I don't miss it, but what I do appreciate about Sacramento is that it's a great place to raise a kid. There's clean parks in the neighborhood I'm in, accessible grocery stores, lots of nature, lots of other people, young adults with families. And so I really appreciate that part of it. It's a great place to raise a kid. And not to say that Oakland isn't a great place, but it is sometimes hard to find parks that are just clean, you know? There are...
Nah, you ain't lying.
And it doesn't even have to be like needles and glass. It could just be goose poop everywhere. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, seriously.
Yeah. And so libraries that are fully functional. Yeah. And so I appreciate that about Sacramento. Yeah. What else do I not miss? I mean, I kind of got used to the fireworks, the gunshots, the cars and the motorcycles, 3 a.m. You know what I'm saying? I lived on seminary for some time, and I just got used to it. I don't feel any way about not hearing it,
Right, okay.
What do you think about the state of Black journalism?
Journalism as a whole is in a hole. There's the media, which is like the major outlets, which has a lot of money behind it and not always a lot of truth behind it. And then there are some hardworking journalists, independent journalists who I follow who are really truth tellers and truth seekers. And so finding those people, those blue collar, hard nosed journalists, is what I usually advise people to do. Find journalists who you individually trust in.
Do you have any suggestions
of individuals?
Yes.
It depends on what topic you're looking at.
Just off the head, not too deep.
Yeah. There's a brother's a white dude out here who's really on top of his game. His name is Darwin. Darwin Bond Graham, I think is his last name. Darwin is tight. He's one of the people who worked on the Celeste Guap case, exposing OPD's molestation of a young woman, a little girl at the time. And Darwin is one of those people where even if it hurts him, he's going to tell the truth. And it's hard to find just people like that.
Yeah.
Black journalists, it's hard, man, because you find a lot of tokenism when this organization hires one black journalist and that person is the black person on staff, and so just trying to navigate that. I mean, even myself, we're like, I realize that I am one of few black voices on KQED's platform.
Yeah.
And so, to my editor's credit, he'll recognize when I'm tuning out. He's like, just let him go. You know what I'm saying? Let him go. Because he's going to come back, but there are times where it's like, nah, this ain't got nothing to do with me. I'm thinking about like the George Floyd stuff and George Floyd stuff, the killing of George Floyd, and how like I wrote a piece being like, hey, look, tell my colleagues I'm not doing no interviews about how black people feel. And my editor was like, yep, we're publishing it, and you go ahead and take a vacation. You know what I'm saying? And so I credit my editor, Gabe Moline, a lot, man. He's a white dude from Santa Rosa who just gets it, Yeah. And so having colleagues definitely assist anybody, but specifically young black journalists trying to figure out the media landscape.
When you come back out here, is there any like little food spots that you gotta have?
I was talking to somebody about this today. I keep going to the same spots, cause so much has changed. So the stuff that I found, I'm like, there's a Korean fried chicken spot on 40th and Telegraph. I've been hooked. They got like some miso garlic chicken wings. Man.
You talking about Bonds, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Man, and then so trying to break out of my habits of going to the same spot.
What burrito truck you go to?
Man, I was just about to say, people get mad at me that I don't go to the burrito truck anymore. I go to this spot on Telegraph and 25th.
25th and Telegraph.
Yeah, it's right by the liquor store. It's
What's it called?
What is this? I'm about to say Ole Burrito. No, what's it called?
Burrito Express.
Ole Burrito Express.
Is it Ole Burrito Express?
That's a truck too.
No. This is I'll look it up.
Ole Burrito Express.
That's on 25th. Yeah, on 25th.
25th Telegraph, right by like the Korean supermarket.
Yeah, right across from the Korean supermarket.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's my favorite because it stay open late. When I'm out in the town, I stay on that side of town.
Okay, got it.
And so there's too many burrito trucks in downtown and West Oakland.
Yeah, I was about to say because I remember you saying Abgar, so you probably.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
I mean, like,
but if I've been in the East or something like that, then I go to the taco truck on 55th, just for the steak fries.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, steak fries is a big move.
That's what's up.
Yeah. Yeah.
He know it. He know that shit.
Yeah, steak fries. Yeah, steak fries. And then when I need to, I go to the one in the Dubs, and then also I don't do the one by the lake that much, man.
You don't hit Sinaloa, the orange one.
It's too spicy.
Okay.
I got baby back. Like, my tongue get burnt, man.
Okay.
Yeah, but I like the fish tacos. They just always too spicy.
Okay. Yeah, them fish tacos are the Sinaloa ones.
It's the sauce.
Yeah. Hey, you know what's funny? I went there and I asked the lady for some salsa. Yeah. Right. I said I got the tacos, but I didn't taste them or nothing. Or I got the tacos. Said, can I get some salsa too? She was like, huh? She looked at me. Hella crazy. Around here, are you boy? Right. She gave me the ultimate side eye and was like, huh? Toss it. But it was crazy. I took a bite. I was like, damn, I didn't need no salsa.
None at all. Yeah. One of my favorite interviews, quick story, one of my favorite interviews ever was at the Sinaloa Taco Truck. I was getting started at KQED and I interviewed all black Y'all familiar with All Black?
Yeah, he's from the dub.
Exactly. So yeah, that's why we interviewed him right there because he's from right around there.
Right.
Okay.
Man, that dude is a genius, dog. And like, I mean, he rap about, pimping 10 toes down, all that shit, right? The way he can reference music, and it's not just hip hop. He's in rock. He's in jazz. He's in like classic. And he's just off the top of his head. Like,
he knows his
I'm like, this dude is really, really smart. And not to say that I thought he was dumb from his music, but I just thought that he was just like into the lifestyle
all
he's
he was
talking about.
about, sure.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Nah, man, fascinating interview. And then since then, stayed in contact with that dude, man. He's, one of the very unique artists that I've been able to talk to through my work.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I'm following some of his stuff.
I appreciate y'all doing this work. Y'all are contributing to the same effort I'm on, man. We're just
absolutely, man.
Like that's up their perspective of Oakland, and same thing with Boots and the work that he's doing, and so
Kindred spirits.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, with that, remember, Oakland is as Oakland does. Stay grounded and spread love. Peace out, y'all.
Peace.
Yep.
That's crazy, that Owen Wilson thing, man. I was listening to some UK rapper. And he said that essential same line. Like, I could be a pick for more fun.
Nah.
The Mac, West MacArthur, Telegraph.
It's crazy because that just comes up with us from the South. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It comes up with us from the South, but also, it was also happening out here when it was the Burberry Coast.
Yeah.
Like, and it was hella gold miners and no women.